The New Orleans Massacre of 1866, also known as the New Orleans Riot, was a tragic event that occurred on July 30, 1866. The incident took place in the aftermath of the American Civil War, during a time of great social and political unrest in the United States. The massacre occurred when a group of white residents, including police officers and members of a local militia, attacked a group of black citizens who were peacefully protesting against the city's oppressive policies towards African Americans. The protesters had gathered outside the Mechanics Institute, a building that served as a meeting place for the city's black community, to demand equal rights and protections under the law. The violence that ensued was brutal and indiscriminate. The white mob opened fire on the crowd, killing and injuring dozens of people. Many of the victims were unarmed and posed no threat to the attackers. Some were chased down and beaten to death in the streets. Women and children were also among the casualties. The incident was not an isolated event, but rather the culmination of years of discrimination and violence against black residents in New Orleans. In the years following the Civil War, the city's black population had made significant gains in terms of political representation and economic opportunity. However, white residents were often resistant to these changes, and tensions between the two communities continued to escalate. The New Orleans Massacre of 1866 was largely ignored by the mainstream media and political establishment at the time, and its significance was downplayed in subsequent years. However, it played a crucial role in shaping the course of American history. The incident highlighted the urgent need for greater protections and rights for African Americans, and it galvanized the civil rights movement in the decades that followed. Today, the New Orleans Massacre of 1866 remains a tragic and largely untold chapter in American history. However, it serves as a reminder of the ongoing struggle for racial justice and equality in the United States, and the importance of acknowledging and addressing the injustices of the past in order to create a more just and equitable future for all. Write more. The New Orleans Massacre of 1866 was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of violence and discrimination against black Americans in the South. The end of the Civil War had brought about significant changes in the legal status of African Americans, including the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution, which abolished slavery, granted citizenship and equal protection under the law, and ensured the right to vote regardless of race. However, these legal gains were often not realized in practice, as white supremacists sought to maintain their dominance and control over black communities. The aftermath of the New Orleans Massacre saw little justice for the victims. While a federal investigation was launched, only a few individuals were arrested and tried for their roles in the violence, and none were ultimately convicted. The lack of accountability for the perpetrators, coupled with the broader climate of racial hostility in the region, served as a stark reminder of the precariousness of black lives and the vulnerability of their civil rights. The New Orleans Massacre also had a lasting impact on the civil rights movement. The incident was widely reported in the black press, and served as a rallying cry for activists and organizations working towards racial justice. It also drew the attention of Northern politicians and journalists, who had previously been dismissive of the plight of black Americans in the South. The massacre helped to galvanize support for the Reconstruction efforts, and laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement of the 20th century. In recent years, efforts have been made to bring greater attention to the New Orleans Massacre of 1866 and other instances of racial violence and injustice in American history. These efforts have included public memorials and commemorations, as well as scholarly research and community-based education initiatives. By acknowledging and reckoning with the past, we can work towards a more equitable and just future, one in which all people are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race or ethnicity.